The mandate of this special series is to start with facts first. Here is the fact of the day. Someone is lying about what President Trump said during that immigration meeting. Democratic Senator Dick Durbin doubled down today, telling Jake Tapper that, yes, the president called certain nations shithole countries. Republican Senator Lindsey Graham has all but confirmed it is true. Here's a key fact. Their stories have never changed. That matters when you're assessing reliability and credibility. You cannot say the same for Senators Perdue and Cotton. Both started by saying they could not recall if the man who should have been the focus of their attention, the President of the United States, said a fairly unforgettable word. Then they both changed their story. Cotton saying he didn't hear the vulgar word, Perdue saying it was a gross misrepresentation. We invited both on the show, both declined. For what it's worth, Cotton said he was a no for the entire run of this special. Ouch. Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen was also at the meeting and is also on team can't recall. But boy, did she get tested today. Listen to this.
Let's see. Strong language. There was, apologies, I don't remember specific word. What I was struck with, frankly, as I'm sure you were as well, was just the general profanity that was used in the room by almost everyone.
This was during a Senate Judiciary Committee hearing. Senator Cory Booker is on that powerful committee. He's going to be on with us to go one-on-one in just a moment. He listened to Nielsen's testimony, and he was not having any of it.
The commander-in-chief, in an Oval Office meeting, referring to people from African countries and Haitians with the most vile and vulgar language. The language festers. When ignorance and bigotry is allied with power, it is a dangerous force in our country. Your silence and your amnesia is complicity. I hurt. When Dick Durbin called me, I had tears of rage when I heard about his experience in that meeting. And for you not to feel that hurt and that pain and to dismiss some of the questions of my colleagues, saying I've already answered that line of questions when tens of millions of Americans are hurting right now because of what they're worried about what happened in the White House. That's unacceptable to me.
And if there were any doubt about the tension between the secretary and the senator, just watch this.
And that you could even say in your testimony the Norwegians were preferenced by him because they're so hardworking.
I didn't.
Excuse me, let me finish.
Happy to.
Joining me now, Democratic Senator Cory Booker of New Jersey, a member of the Judiciary Committee. Senator, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me on, Chris.
And I'm just going to ask you straight. Do you believe the White House is lying to the American people about what happened in that meeting with the president and those lawmakers?
I don't believe it at all. Not only do I trust Dick Durbin, he's a man of immense character, but also Lindsey Graham, who's been a friend and a partner on many things, who has said everything, nothing that's contrary to what has been reported by others that happened in that room. And that's the thing that is just so gut-churning to these kind of words that can come out from the president. It's not the vulgarity. It's definitely not the vulgarity. It's the bigotry and the discrimination that comes from the mouth of the president that in our climate today causes damage. Those words just don't disappear. They fester, they poison, and they give license to a lot of people who are intent on doing bad things.
We heard you, obviously, with the Homeland Secretary, but there's also Senators Cotton and Perdue. Do you believe that they are all part of a cover-up?
I believe that they're not fully and fairly representing what happened in that room, and I'm sure they have their own motivations and their own reasons, but this is a moral moment for our country, and we seem to continue to have what I think are just very profound moments, moral moments. And the politics of it, people who are choosing politics over morality, as it says from words of Scripture, what does it profit a man to gain the whole world but to lose their soul? And this has been an angering few days for me, but also a sad few days, especially seeing Dick Durbin, who is one of the more beloved people on both sides of the aisle here, one of the more straight shooters, to see him being questioned. But even worse than that, when I was this weekend, I was in Puerto Rico, I was in Atlanta, I was in Newark, New Jersey, and to hear how many people, Africans who are Africans now African Americans, to hear Haitians, to hear African Americans, the hurtfulness of this moment, and the knowledge that in American history since 9/11, we've had 85 major attacks in our country. 73% of them have been by white nationalist hate groups against minorities, against Muslims, against others. And for us to be silent in the face of a president who utters reflective bigotry and not say anything. We know our history. We know what happens when people stand by and do nothing and say nothing. But then to help obscure it or to try to minimize it, that does nothing more than contribute it. So we just had King Day, Chris, and King said it more eloquently than I did. What we'll have to repent for in this day and age is not just the vitriolic words and violent actions of the bad people, but the silence and inaction of the good people. And that's what worries me.
Do you believe that the President of the United States is one of the reasons for the attacks that you were just mentioning?
Sir, I've seen since this election, since this president came into office, I've seen incidences in my state of bigotry, hate crimes go up. I've talked to folks from the ADL to law enforcement and seeing how these things seem to be going up, how people seem to have, and again, this is not a broad brush, this is a very narrow element of American society, but there seems to be a license out there that people have. And when the president won't condemn it, when you have things like the marchers in Virginia with tiki torches, and the president of the United States can't condemn it, when his very words are being used by supremacists on their websites, in their communications as justifications of their actions. The President of the United States is our commander-in-chief, has constitutional responsibilities, but they are also a moral voice in this country.
So you put this at his feet, Senator?
No, I am not putting it at his feet. I'm saying he has a responsibility of his office. He has been given power by the people, and I believe that power comes responsibility. And so he is not calling to the best of our angels as a country. He is not calling to the heart and the spirit and the greatness of our country. He's going to the lowest common denominators, or worse. He's getting into the gutter. He's demeaning and degrading people consistently from his campaign to his time in presidency, attacking Gold Star families, saying a judge can't do his job just because of his ancestry, saying ignorance of history, not even knowing if people like Frederick Douglass are alive or not. That kind of ignorance and bigotry allied with power is indeed a very dangerous thing in our country.
I can understand why you would direct that kind of talk to the president based on what you're saying right now, but what was it in that interview today, that questioning with the Homeland Secretary, that got you so angry?
She didn't seem to understand the connection and the worry and the fear that exists in this community, in our country. There's definitely fear of terrorism from abroad or terrorist-inspired, jihadist terrorists who are inspired at home. But when I go to churches from Alabama, churches in Atlanta, churches in Camden and Newark, when I talk to communities of color, when I talk to Sikh communities, when I talk to Muslim communities, there is also a fear of hate groups. There's a fear of white nationalist groups, people and children in my community who watched what happened in Virginia. And so for her not to understand, not to answer a direct question, this is when I really got set off from Connecticut Senator Blumenthal, for her not to answer a direct question and dismiss it and saying, I'm here to talk about things to keep Americans safe, and not to understand that her complicitness, her failure to call out bigotry, her silence, and for not to understand the connection and the thread in this country, the urgency we all have to standing up and speaking out against hate, that got me angry. I am here right now, Chris. I can show you time and time again in my personal history and in my family history where great Americans, white folks, Jewish folks, people who are different than me in color and creed, stood up for my family, called out bigotry, called out hate, fought against injustice. Even the house my family bought that I grew up in, it took great white people, Americans who believe in our values, standing up for my family to even buy the house and the home I grew up in. And so for me not to get angry, to see someone right now in modern American history in 2018 to witness bigotry and hate and not call it out, well, guess who did? Lindsey Graham did. Lindsey Graham went right back at the President of the United States and reminded him that people come to this country escaping famine, escaping war, and it hasn't just been countries in Africa or South America, it was countries in Europe as well. And those countries in Europe, the violence they escaped from, there are lessons there. When people started talking about social engineering, about how certain races are more preferable than other races, we saw what happened with that in Europe when people didn't check that kind of hate and check that kind of violence, and what happened as a result of it. So I cannot be silent, and she definitely hit a nerve in me, because I know the debt I owe to great Americans who stood up against bigotry. That's why I'm here, and I will never, ever stop trying to pay that debt forward by speaking out against what I think is injustice, bigotry, and hate.
So when she says, the Homeland Secretary, I didn't hear him say that. I heard what Lindsey Graham said, and I heard other people cursing at the president, but I didn't hear that. You don't accept it?
Chris, I imagine you've been in the Oval Office. I've had the privilege of going into that space, which is one of the most sacred spaces in our civic life, the Oval Office of the United States of America. It's a small office. I've been there with good groups, large groups of senators, 10 of us or so. I've been there in individual meetings. When the commander-in-chief, it's an advantage as a president when people walk in that office, even as a senator, even when it becomes, some people might think it becomes routine, you're still in awe when you walk into that environment. And for her to say that she did not hear the words of the commander-in-chief, did not hear Lindsey Graham stand up against the rhetoric, the vile rhetoric of the commander-in-chief, for her to say, I missed that, I don't recall that, that is unacceptable to me and patently false. Not only is he the commander-in-chief, not only is he the president, not only is it the Oval Office, that's her boss. When he speaks, I'm sure she listened. And what she was doing right now was cowardice. What she's doing right now is what King would call sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity, in meaningfully not representing what happened in that room. She should stand up and speak out and tell the truth. Tell the truth about what happened. It's the most honorable thing you can do, but you were under oath today, and you danced and you dodged and you half-stepped and you allowed those kind of words to go unchecked in the American public. And I'm telling you right now, I've traveled all throughout this weekend and heard from so many people, from legends from the civil rights movement when I was at the King Center for their King Center Awards, to folks in my community, in my neighborhood, who were so hurt, so distressed that the President of the United States would utter these words and that there would be a conspiracy of silence around them that ultimately is complicit in those feelings of bigotry and those sentiments of hate.
How deep does your reservation go about the secretary? Do you now have a no confidence vote in you about her ability to run the agency, or is this just an isolated incident?
First of all, I don't think it's isolated. We're all the totality of things that happen to us. But again, my heroes in this place are people like John Lewis. There's got to be a degree of grace that you extend to people. I don't want to judge her sole incompetence based upon this. All human beings, including myself, we're all mountain ranges. We all have peaks and we all have valleys. But dear God, today I saw not just a valley, but a Grand Canyon that is hurtful and deeply unfortunate.
Now, answer your critics, whether it was Nielsen's eye roll when you were talking to her today. At a certain point, she obviously thought that you just wanted to go on a riff, that you wanted to grandstand. And then you had people start making up memes about you on the political right. I'm sure you've heard about them. What do you say to those people who say, well, there's Cory Booker. He just announced he's running for president. That's what's going on. He's using this moment. He's trying to elevate himself. What do you say to that?
There's a great New Jersey leader once said, before I got into politics, I would help somebody cross the street, and I was just a good person. Now that I'm in politics, I try to help a person cross the street. I'm just looking for a vote. I can't spend my life, and you know this because you get it too, answering all of my critics. I can't worry about what other people say. I'm here in this position by the grace of the people of New Jersey, who didn't look to my color of my skin, who didn't look to my religion, but just thought I could do a good job for Jersey. And so I owe them just my focus on my purpose and not to worry about popularity. I owe them my focus on what's significant and not worry about what other people say. And so I'm just going to continue to do my job here. I've been consistent since I've gotten to the United States Senate. I've stood up and spoken out against other things that I thought were morally wrong, violative of our values as a nation, and hurtful to people, and I'm going to continue to do that. Nothing is going to silence me, especially not memes on the internet or critics across the aisle.
So now the tough part, Senator. I understand where your head is. I understand where you're saying your heart is. What are you going to do about it? You have a big decision to make about these upcoming votes. There's a division in your party about what to do with this Friday's budget deadline. Some of the Democrats are saying, let's do a clean bill, let's be fiscally responsible, and let's do DACA separately. Others are saying, no, I want DACA or I'm not going to vote for a clean bill on the budget this Friday. Where are you, sir?
I respect all my colleagues' decisions, but this is where I am. People talk about DACA or throw out policy names. These are people. Thousands and thousands of them live in my state. These are fellow Americans in every single way except for a piece of paper. These are kids that some of them don't even remember their home countries, that speak our language. These are folks that serve in the military, hundreds of them do. These are people that are teachers and first responders. They are Americans. And again, this is a moral moment. I cannot leave those people behind. We are a nation where we know we're all in this together. And if you've been willing to bleed for this country, if you've gone to our public schools and benefited from our education, if you're willing to serve others, if you're willing to show up in storms and hurricanes and put your life at risk to save your neighbor, they've shown a level of patriotism, which is not about the piece of paper you have. Patriotism is about love of country and loving others. And love is sacrifice, love is work. These DACA kids have shown this. These dreamers have shown this. And in my heart, I cannot leave them behind.
But why do you have to leave them behind? I mean, let's talk some political strategy here for a moment. There's no question that you've got leverage, but I don't know why the Democrats believe that the leverage ends on Friday. You're going to want to shoehorn something for the dreamers or something into this budget resolution. You're going to have to give something to get that. But on the flip side, if you do a clean bill on the budget, you still have the deadline that the president set. There's still pressure to make a determination. Why give up your leverage to be fiscally responsible and pass a budget bill and shoehorn DACA into it? Why not do them separately?
Listen, I don't speak for all my Democratic colleagues.
Just you, Senator, where your head is.
So just me.
Yeah, just you.
So my head is very simple. This is an artificial deadline that was set up by the president. He didn't have to inject this into this. He could have said, let's work on a bill, but he created this artificial deadline.
So let him back off it. Play by his rules, and then he'll have to back off.
Well, again, and my second point, Chris, is simply this. There's a deal to be made. Lindsey Graham and Dick Durbin showed up with a deal that I'm telling you right now, we would get 70, 80 votes for on the floor of the Senate. This is already done. We have a president that controls, obviously, the White House. The Republicans have a majority in the House. Republicans have a majority in the Senate. And he claims to be a great deal maker. There are elements of that deal that don't sit right with me, but heck, he could have won battles, gotten billions of dollars for his border protection, which is something that I believe we should protect our borders, but the billions of dollars extra he would have gotten. He would have gotten an end to the diversity lottery. There was many things he could have celebrated about doing a great deal that was brought to him on a silver platter by Lindsey Graham and other Republicans who worked hard to find a bipartisan measure. And so right now, we could get this done. I mean, he could call people back to the Senate, and I'm telling you right now, 70-plus votes in support of it. And so I don't understand why we're using American citizens in every way, except for a piece of paper, as pawns in a political game. And you've talked to dreamers. What's their life like right now?
Scared, anxious. But that's all the more reason to make sure you do it right. If you shoehorn it into the budget resolution and it's left with any open ends, there could be jeopardy that way as well, Senator.
And if you take the deal that Lindsey and Dick, Senators Durbin and Senators Graham put together, which was a well-thought-out deal. Again, I don't agree with every part of it, but if you just take that deal, which has been well thought of, we would have a way to move forward for this country. And you know this, 70, 80% of Americans agree with where Durbin and Lindsey Graham are. Get something done in this. Stop kicking the can down the road and putting these fellow Americans into incredible anguish and anxiety as they're trying to do their jobs as ambulance drivers, military personnel, or teachers.
I hear where you are. One more quick question. Some of this talk about how to respond to the president's rhetoric includes, by some members of the Congressional Black Caucus, that they may boycott the State of the Union. Do you endorse that kind of move?
I respect my colleagues, but I will be there because I respect the office of the presidency. I respect our traditions, and I will be there. And I've watched awful things happen during that I think are disrespectful, like someone screaming and heckling the president, like a Republican congressperson did. We need to respect that office because that speech, while I might not agree with the word he says, that speech is not only internal speech for our country, but it actually shows the country to the world. Hundreds of thousands, expect millions of people will probably be watching that speech. I will be in my seat. I will be respectful to the office. I will be respectful of our traditions, even if I don't agree with what he has to say.
Some big days between now and Friday. We'll keep checking with the office to see where your head is on this. Your vote is going to be an important one, to be sure. Senator Cory Booker, Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.